Welcome to Trendy Words, the podcast about the meaningless, misleading, and nonsense words we use in business marketing and what we can do about them. My name is Andrew, copywriter and part of your attack surface area, and our word for this episode is human firewall from the subset of marketing in cybersecurity. I am joined today by my guest, Sara Carty. Hi, Sara.
Hi, Andrew. How's it going?
It's doing all right. It's a lovely sunny day here in the UK. And we're recording this on a Friday, and hopefully we have a nice, relaxing weekend ahead of us.
Let's hope.
Yeah. Yeah. So why don't we start off for those people that don't know who you are? Do you want to share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Sara. I live in London, originally from Canada, Montreal. And yeah, basically, I've been working in tech for about 15 years, mostly in startups. And I would say probably in the last 5 years, I've been focused primarily on cybersecurity. So I have a marketing agency that focuses on cybersecurity marketing called Unboring, which I've built with my business partner, Kelly. Shout out to Kelly. Uh, and so we basically, all of our clients, all of our focus, and our backgrounds, especially, are within cybersecurity, which is great for us and why we focus on it. I'm also working on my doctorate in cyber diplomacy with the University of East London. So that is slightly more, I guess, a little bit different to just a straight cybersecurity focus. It looks at, I would say, the intersection between cybersecurity and geopolitics. So a little bit still relevant, I would say, but slightly different. And yeah, I think that's probably enough about me, to be fair.
Yeah. And one of the ways that I think one of the things that originally got my attention and how I met Sara was that you don't usually hear a lot about marketing specifically in cybersecurity spaces.
Yep.
And Sara is one of the few marketers that I've seen that had a speaking spot at a cyber conference that I had attended. And I think, that was probably, the first time that I actually saw your name in print, and I thought, who are these people? This is great because marketers we don't usually have much of a platform
Yeah.
in the very sort of technical jargony world of cyber.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I was probably just as surprised as you were, to be fair. But I think there's what I was talking about at that session, as far as I remember, was fishing for awareness. So, how you can leverage marketing psychology for security engagement and security awareness and training. And I think that's something that I'm quite passionate about. It's something that I tend to research quite a bit as well. There's a lot. I think there's a lot that can be done and said about it. But from my perspective, it is all about engagement. It is all about getting that employee to really sort of perk up and show interest and then retain the information. And marketers are fantastic at that. That's what our job is. Our job is to engage. Our job is to build brands that are memorable. And so, being sort of a fleeting thought or sending in my experience at least, sending through a 2-hour security awareness training that I'm likely going to forget, as soon as I turn it off and finish it up, isn't really effective. But what can be effective is building campaigns in the same way you would a marketing campaign.
Yeah, and I feel like that segues really nicely into talking about our phrase today, upon human firewall, because so much of, I feel like, the entrenched jargon in cybersecurity marketing is subtly and sometimes more overtly tries to make people feel kind of bad about their fallibility as human beings.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that if you take it back to what we learn in marketing psychology, especially, fear will only take you so far, but blame is never going to get engagement. So I think looking at it from the perspective of how would I really leverage this, or launch this campaign, I should say, I think that's a better approach. I think there's a lot to be said when you on one side say something like the human firewall, like you said, and sort of put people in a position of somewhat, responsibility. But then on the other side, you say, well, humans are the weakest link. You can't have it both ways. There has to be some sort of empowerment built into the way that you train people so that not only do they think about security in terms of what they're doing in the workplace, but they think about security in terms of how can I keep my kids secure online? How can I be secure when I'm doing my banking? There's so many other facets. And I think that we almost approach it in a way where it's completely separate, and we focus on these things where we send the phishing simulation, and it just it has this, it feels very much like you're trying to trick people, and people don't enjoy that a lot of the time. So
Mm.
I think, from at least from a marketing perspective, it's not how I would build a campaign. And also, I have to say, and I've said this in my sessions in the past, and I've said this in the session that you watched, actually, if I build a marketing campaign and it's not effective, I don't then just blame the audience, right? I have to look internally and think, what did I do here to not get them engaged or not get their attention? Or, how can I optimize or change or pivot or whatever it might be? But in security, that happens all the time. Oh, it's the people. Oh, they're not taking it in. They're not learning well enough. They're not taking training seriously. And you think, I personally don't take training seriously unless I'm engaged, unless there's an interest for me outside of just, it meets this policy or the tick box.
And I think that's an issue throughout cybersecurity, is that regardless, it often seems, of the efforts of the people actually working inside of your cyber department, that it's often communicated and made to feel like cyber and the whole practice of just safely being online at work is a burden, and it's time consuming, and it is viewed persistently as a cost center. I mean, and
Hmm.
to a degree, I kind of get that, because your security is not generally where your business makes revenue.
Exactly.
But in the same time, just making it feel like a burden all of the time, I don't see how that helps the case in any way.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel for anyone in the security awareness space or doing any sort of training in security, because a lot of the time they don't get that sort of buy-in. They don't get the opportunity to really say, well, let's look at how we can build out this campaign, or let's look at how, because they don't have that sense of autonomy, I feel. And this is just from speaking to, the people that I know in those spaces, in those careers. And it can feel like, they're kind of like I said, a tick box exercise. Let's just get it done. Let's just get it out of the way. We need to get it, we need to find something that will work. And, who cares if they retain the information? But then if you think about, you know, almost any other type of training, you really do prioritize. Like if you think about learning and development departments in larger companies and corporations, you really do have to think about the metrics around retention of information and how it's applied within the company, and because that's how it's measured. So I think I hate to just blame any one person. I think it's, you know there's a bigger systematic issue at play here, because it's not prioritized. Engagement isn't prioritized. It's just looked at as like, kind of a tick the box, like I said, and it doesn't empower anybody.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of it ends up being treated a little bit like insurance. Like, you're taught all of this stuff, but you're told, it's like, hopefully you'll never have to use it, and that you can
Yeah.
yeah, quietly just sort of, oh, we have to do this in the background. We have to get our Cyber Essentials Plus certification.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
once that's done, hopefully we never have to think about it until there's an attack, and then suddenly it's, oh, wow, well
yeah.
maybe we should have checked to make sure that people actually learned something in that security session that we make them take every year.
Yeah, and I understand. I mean, I get the rhetoric around people being, the weakest link, or whatever you might call it, because phishing and social engineering breaches are still incredibly high up in comparison to a lot of other types of threat vectors. So it makes sense that that would be something that you would talk about and sort of prioritize, position it that way.
Yep.
But then you can't have, again, both sides, because if you're not prioritizing the training and you don't care as much about getting the actual engagement rather than just getting it done, it's the same as me putting out a campaign and saying, I just need to get something out. I just need to get something out, and
Yep.
not really thinking about what it looks like, what it feels like, which emotions am I trying to hit? What is the color? Like, what types of colors am I taking into consideration? All of these things are very either emotional or psychological. And so, if you think about that ahead of time, then you're likely to have something that's more successful. Whereas a lot of the time it's just get it out, just get that training out, let's get it done, and then we're done for the year. And
Mhm.
you'll get what you put into it a lot of the
Yeah.
time.
And I feel like that attitude is carried over from other areas of of marketing where the stakes aren't necessarily as high. But when you take that in cyber, where the outcome and results of attack are really
Yeah.
meaningful and can potentially financially cripple a business, then that you really do need to be able to go the extra mile, in spite of the fact that the payoff that you're getting from that is much more difficult to see.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and especially in the, it, thinking about how we consume things these days, it's not like it was 10 years, 5 years ago, even. We're on social media that doesn't really require engagement. We think about TikTok, right? You just flip through it. You might give it a little like if you're really inclined to, but a lot of the time, it takes about 2 seconds to get the interest or not. And so when you put someone into the position where they have to then watch, a 2 hour video or a 1 hour video, and it isn't an interesting topic for them, and they're not really getting much out of it, they feel, then of course they're going to, they'll pay it. I know companies, and I won't name any, but I know of companies where their teams have just kind of, chat GBT, what's the answer to this? Give me it. I'm going to put it into the quiz, and then I'm fine and good to go, as part of their security training. And I think, that obviously you're not going to remember anything from that. You're just trying to get it done. The same way we did when we were in school, and we would take exams and we had classes that we didn't enjoy, and we memorized what we needed to do to get it done, but we didn't retain that information.
So, Sarah, what can businesses do to get away from the ick of the human firewall? And then one of the things that you touched on was the issue of so much of the way that cybersecurity is sold and presented involves a passive consumption of information, which, as you say, is not proving to be very good for engagement.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like the I think the way that we consume media these days has changed drastically, like I said. And so you kind of have to meet people where they are, but then you also have to make it somewhat engaging and interesting and, relevant to them, outside of just a policy that you're trying to meet, or a tick box, like I said. One way I've seen this done quite brilliantly is there's someone I follow who is in the security awareness space, and he does presentations to sort of corporate companies, so quite large. And what he'll do during his presentation is he'll throw in a few slides, and of course it's not a security awareness tool, so it's slightly different, but it's still relevant and can be implemented into technology as well. But what he'll do is he'll throw in a few slides where he talks specifically about keeping people's children safe online. And the reason he does this is because he knows that probably about, I would say he said about 65, 70% of the people in the room that he's speaking to have children. So even if they're not paying attention up to that point, when they hear about how to keep their children safe online, they perk up. And then he'll merge some of the information that he's trying to get across to them to sort of retain with some of that information, those takeaways that they will care about keeping their children safe online. So it is a lot about developing content that makes the difference, that matters. If you're just doing it and, I want to create a product, and then you have I don't know, cartoons that look from like they're from the 1990s, or well, actually I won't say 90s because nostalgia is back, but 2005, let's say, or sort of workflows within the tool that just don't make sense or don't give you anything. For me personally, I would do things like choose your own adventure, or something that is a little bit more, I guess, representative of the role or the department that they're in. Or there's so many different ways. And I think this is what we do in marketing, right? We come up with campaigns. We look at who our ideal customer profile is. We try to, put together lists of things that there may be some interest in. And we do a lot of research before we actually build something that we want people to engage with. And I think that needs to be consistent. And so with these kinds of security awareness tools, the same rules apply. Media is consumed the same across the board. Whether you're in your office or not, you're still scrolling TikTok the same way, or you're still on LinkedIn the same way. So that needs to be implemented in the same way.
Mm. And really working on building and communicating these things with a real sensitivity to, this is the way that people behave, this is the way that people consume content, rather than in the more corporate authoritarian of, is you
Yeah,
need to comply with this.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Telling people that they just need to do it because is no longer, I don't know if that was ever effective. It might have been, but it is not going to be effective in this day and age. People, it's a different life now, right? We've been online, we've got social media, we've got, there's so many things that have changed so drastically over the course of the last 10 years.
Mm. And so much of it as well, I feel, is also, it's become a lot more non-linear, whereas we've come a
Mhm.
long way from being able to get from idea to result in a sort of a more or less linear process pattern, especially when it comes to doing corporate work. And now it's, you don't really know always at all where you're going to get the result. And it
Mhm.
may come linearly, it may not, especially when we talk about the way that marketing works, which is often incredibly non-linear, is we are often, despite, I feel like the talk about always being constantly data driven, a lot of what we end up doing are really just like what we safe gambles on what we are believing the tendency of human behavior to be.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's the correlation between a great marketer and someone who understands both marketing and human psychology. That there's in my opinion, you know, great marketers are probably also, or not also, but could be probably the greatest of cyber criminals, to be fair, hackers in general, because there's so much overlap between the two.
Yeah. So when you're giving, say, you have to go and give these kinds of workshops to your clients and in front of other businesses, what do you hope that your audience understands going into that?
I think it's more of the, I guess there are a few things. There are a few, I would say, there are a few things that marketers will use when they're building campaigns that can be incredibly useful or for building security awareness, and I guess by that same token for are being used by cyber criminals. So why not leverage what we're seeing happening for good? Why not build that into products that we're using to train people rather than shying away from it? Let's leverage things like social proof. Let's leverage things like the curiosity gap and a sense of urgency. It's to say, when we see an email come through our inbox and we say, oh, it says sale, there's only 3 days left, to get this 2-for-1 deal of something that you really enjoy, it's doing its job. It's giving you that sense of urgency. And you see that a lot sort of with social engineering. They leverage all of the same tools as marketing does, for the most part, better than some marketers do. But I think it's understanding that that can also be leveraged for training purposes. So making sure that you are educating people about the fact that, there are these terms like social proof or urgency or whatever it might be that are being used in marketing. And then they're more knowledgeable about it, not only for criminal activity, but they can have a better sense of themselves when they see an email come through that says, sale ends in 3 days. They can think, oh, that's the oh, that's the urgency, oh, that's the curiosity gap, whatever it is. Or, they give you a little bit of a peek of something and then, try to draw you in. Those are all marketing tactics. And so they're being leveraged in many different ways. They're just not being leveraged in the best way for training purposes.
Mm. And I feel like one thing to really underline is like it's nothing that we are doing. We have all these fancy
No.
names for it in terms of social engineering and social proof. And like in marketing, we love, like, half the reason this podcast exists is we have a deep abiding love of putting funny labels on
Yeah.
things. What we're really talking about are human behaviors that have been around since the pyramids were being built. We've just studied them a lot more, and
Yeah.
we've yeah defined them in such a way that we can talk about them as discrete things. But
Mhm.
really, these are all things that every single human being experiences probably on a day-to-day basis. They just don't have a name for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all get those emails that, are trying to sell us something. We all get those emails that say, you know, your password might expire, or, they're one and the same really. I think it's just a matter of leveraging those types of frameworks for, training purposes more so that people are aware of it, because we're aware of it. We're marketers. We know, we leverage it. We do we use it in and out on a day-to-day basis, but it's not apparent to everyone. Of course it wouldn't be. We're leveraging it for our campaigns, so we know about them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, nobody ever talks about being like, when a friend introduces you to another friend, you don't immediately think, "Oh, that's social proof right there." It's just not
Yeah.
something that we think about when we are
Hmm.
dealing with people in person. It's
Yeah.
only something that we start thinking of in that way when suddenly we're doing in this impersonal space of digital marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly it. I mean, you, as a marketer, your brain thinks in terms of these processes and these frameworks and all of that. But if we start to decentralize that a little bit, if we start to share that knowledge, it helps people beyond just security awareness. It helps people to understand a little bit more about human behavior, but also about things like their buying habits, or prompts that might affect them more, or there's all of these things that are quite interesting that could be great to share.
So if you were speaking to a business person and you were looking for, like, where could they start looking in their own business for clues and evidence that this is happening, where would you suggest that they look first?
I mean, I think it depends on where the interest is. So if they're looking for anything from just like a people understanding people perspective, there's some really good books. I have them right in front of me, actually, so funny enough. But there are really some great books about understanding human behavior. So there's one called Sizing People Up by Robin Dreeke, a former FBI, and I won't give it away, but very, very useful. There's The People Hacker by Jenny Radcliffe. She's very well known in cybersecurity, so I don't think I have to share too much more about that. One that I really, really liked, and I think taught me quite a bit, was The Psychology of Spies and Spying by Adrian, Furnham, and John Taylor. That was really interesting because it kind of brings both sides of, I would say, probably the side of, obviously, security, not maybe cybersecurity, but security and breaches and things like that, but then also the human element. So understanding how people would manipulate people, how they would interact with people, so I think it gives a lot more than just, this is what happened and this is like the historical aspect.
Mm. All right. And I'll make a note of putting those titles into the show notes as your recommendations later on.
Thanks.
Cool. So, Sarah, if anybody wished to get to know you a bit better or wanted to reach out to you, how do they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn probably more than I should probably share. So definitely find me on LinkedIn. You can find me through my website, unboring.digital. I'm going to be at ICE coming up in September, at the end of September, the International Cyber Expo. I do try to go to most of the cybersecurity events, at least in London, because I'm local. So you can find me probably at any of those. And yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to engage. I mean, I'm always excited to talk to people about these topics, especially because I think marketing psychology within cybersecurity is such an interesting topic, but also so relevant and useful if you have that digital marketing background, especially. I find it just fascinating.
Mm, cool. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate a like or a comment to let me know what you liked about it. If you're interested in leaving any more direct feedback, you can find me on LinkedIn at AG Monroe. You can also send me an email at andrew@andrewmonroe.com. And like Sarah, I do also plan to be at the International Cybersecurity Expo in London at the end of September. If you're there, I look forward to meeting you. All right, then. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.